welcome to New Europe Studios, where you can watch us make the news. Today I'm talking to Mae Jemison, a scientist, an astronaut, an educator, and an inspiration to many people. So, Ms. Jemison, one of your projects is the 100-year Starship. And part of that is because you're looking at trying to encourage people to think long-term and to think about space. Could you first tell us, why is it so important for us to continue exploring space?
So 100-year Starship is really about sort of making the capabilities to travel to another star system a reality in 100 years. I use the word capabilities. Why did I say that? I didn't say we're mounting a mission. It's because in order to actually be able to go to another star system, you have to have these revolutionary changes in our technology. So it's really that pursuit of something extraordinary tomorrow that builds a better world today. How does that work? So when I was growing up as a little girl, we were sort of really the beginnings of the modern day space exploration. So we were, developing all kinds of things, first putting satellites up, all of that. Today, if you pull out, people walk around with space technology in their cell phones, right? The global positioning satellite systems, GPS, that helps you navigate around cities that you never knew. The maps that are on your phones, which they have these images from all over the world that you can go in from satellites, right? You have the capability now when we look at images, magnetic resonance imaging, MRIs. So you go to the doctor, you get in this big magnet, and they can see the inside and how your body's functioning. The algorithms, that is the software that help to develop those images from these magnetic symbols, they came from technologies that helped us to be able to make sense of the electrical signals we got when we scan the surface of planets, other planets like Venus and stuff. Every day we're involved with space technologies, but they were developed years ago for another purpose. And it was really that push in doing something very difficult that allows us to have some of the incredible advances that we see every day. What my project 100-Year Starship is about is pushing radical leaps in technology design, radical leaps in knowledge, radical leaps in human systems. But we do it from the perspective of trying to get to another star, which is a really, really difficult task that we don't know how to do right now.
I mean, this is one of the interesting things. I mean, one of the cliches of space exploration is we went out into space and we discovered ourselves. And you've been on the International Space Station as well, and I noticed you mentioned the technology on mobile phones. It comes from space exploration, or one of the offshoots from that. It's because I can look on my phone and it sends off a little alert when the ISS goes overhead. So I can see it, and I can tell you, just standing on Earth and looking at it past ahead and knowing what it is, it's a wonderful feeling. It's something great that we're doing, isn't it?
Well, let me tell you, I was not on ISS. I actually left NASA before the space station was built, but I did fly on the Space Shuttle Endeavour, and I did a lot of experiments. So those experiments, for example, we did experiments on how to make semiconductor materials, like those are what our computer chips are made of. Why would we want to do that in space? Because it's weightless. And these materials are made by actually putting in little contaminants of other metals. And that's what gives it the really cool electrical properties that we use for computer chips. But you can do that better in weightlessness because things don't settle out, right? Yeah. Think about, you have a big glass of, for me it's iced tea. I live in Texas, right? So we're gonna have to do iced tea. We sweeten our tea with sugar. All the sugar falls to the bottom. But imagine if you're in space, all the sugar stays where you put it. That's some of the things. So there are all these capabilities that happen when you use this different perspective. It's pretty incredible where we've gone, but we have a lot more to do. I can tell you, I told you I was growing up as a little girl. Yeah. I thought I would be on Mars by the time I went into space. I thought I would just be going into space. I'd be on Mars. I'd be going to one of the moons of Jupiter or something like that. But it's really, how do we move things forward? What is that public commitment that we need to make things happen?
Because, I mean, the idea of a 100-year Starship which is essentially saying if in 100 years' time we want to launch a spacecraft towards our nearest star Alpha Centauri, what do we have to do now to build the process and to begin this? Now it's a wonderful thought experiment, but it's a wonderful way of getting some more long-term thinking in policy than perhaps we're used to. But it's also a way of inspiring the young and also people from different communities, different genders, to get involved in this, because this is going to have to take a global effort, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it's a thought and do experiment. So when I say and do, because there are things we have to do now in order to be able to get there. We have to do a much better job working in some areas that people don't think of as space, right? So if you're going to go to another star, imagine first of all, it's going to take you a really long time. Stars are very, very far apart. And it would take us 70,000 years to get there if we were going at the speed of Voyager, which just left our solar system. So we have to go much faster. We have to do a lot more with energy. Let's say you could get it down to the trip down to 50 years, right? If you get it down to 50 years, you're going to have to take all your food and your systems with you. So you're going to talk about sustainability. So one of the things that we take for granted here on Earth is you put stuff in the soil and it more or less grows, right? And that's because there's this whole system of microbes that help plants take in nitrogen and turn it into, plant materials that we animals eat, right? That sustains us. But those microbes won't necessarily be healthy if you take them up in weightlessness in space. So we got to understand a lot more about microbial systems in agriculture, the sustainability, just to be able to think and contemplate this trip, because you can't stop for groceries, right? It's not like you got some place where you can stop and you can pick up groceries. You have to be able to take it with you. So there are all these issues that feed into that. And that's the reason when we start talking about why 100-year Starship, why this idea of going to another star is really transformative to our planet, is because everything that we need to know in order to have a successful trip to another star are the very same things we need to know to survive as a species on this planet, because that's where most of us are going to be, on this planet. But we have to have another way of thinking about it, because we're so used to things being okay on Earth. You can sort of do stuff and we think the Earth is going to take care of us, but the reality is that we have to figure some of these pieces out. We have to figure out recycling. We have to figure out energy production. We can't keep doing it the same way. We have to come up with something different. We have to figure out, how do we learn to behave with each other, right? Why is 100-year Starship good for that? Why is this idea of interstellar? Because if I told you I want world peace, it's sort of a giggle factor, right? These sort of people say, that's kind of absurd. It's just absurd. You can't think about that. But you could think about 5,000 people being in a contained space and going to start a new civilization. We can think about that in terms of behavior and interactions. It's more, we can get our hands around that. But that's really something that's extremely important for us to think about in our world today.
Because the analogy is that we are on spaceship Earth, and you're just simply saying this. If we look at this in a very small micro level on a spacecraft journey, it applies to the 6 billion of us who live here.
Right. We can think about culture. We can think about governance and interactions much better if we don't get overwhelmed by the problem of dealing with 6 billion people, right?
Yes. And the other thing that really strikes me is what you keep mentioning, the practicality, the practical results. This is not doing something just because we can, or it's a cool idea. This is something that applies to our lives now, the lives of our children and our grandchildren.
Yes.
So the question is, are we putting enough money into this? Are we putting enough effort into this? Is there the political will to make these ideas come into reality?
I often think that what's happening today is we're getting to be very short-term in our thinking. So often now we require that everything has an immediate payoff in 2 years, right? We don't have a lot of tolerance beyond 2 years, maybe 5 years, but we don't have a lot of tolerance for that. But that's the reason why we need lots of people involved. Right now, when we start talking about biotech industry, right?
Yep.
It's really based on research that was done 30, 40 years ago around DNA, RNA. We're just able to actually use it now. We think about lasers and surgery and da-da-da-da. Laser research was really done in the late 1950s, early 1960s. That's when we started learning about lasers and this light amplification, right? Through simultaneous emission. That's when we started learning about lasers, but we're just now really able to start to implement it in everyday life now, and the payoff is now. So some kind of way we have to figure out, how do we put at least some small portion of the funds that we have, that we invest in things that are going to be the feedstock of the future. We have to do that now.
Because when we live in a world where things do often come down to money and to that, we can look at, for example, on the Apollo program, there was this great furore at times saying this is a tremendous waste of money. Why are we doing this? How can we possibly afford it? And we can look back now on that and the legacy of these missions and the way that we saw ourselves afterwards differently. That's got to be the best value for money ever spent.
So think about it. There was a quote by the first president of Tanzania, who I have so much respect for, Julius Nyerere. And it was this juxtaposition that people often think of when they think of space. He said, while they were trying to reach the moon, we were trying to reach the village. I would submit that nowadays we're able to reach many villages because of space technologies, because of the communications capabilities, because we can actually look down from space and see land, we can see waterways, we can understand about what's going on, the mineral resources. Because we had that opportunity, we use that. And when people think about waste of money, I think sometimes we don't really sort of step back and say, at its height, the Apollo program was maybe 1% or 1.5% of the U.S. budget. It's a lot of money, but when you think of it in context, it wasn't that much money. What I'm concerned about is, how do we get that commitment? And I think we get that commitment these days for doing this big, bold, audacious research. From the point of view of what the name of our proposal was when we sort of won this seed funding, the name of the proposal was An Inclusive, Audacious Journey Transforms Life Here on Earth and Beyond. And that's that issue. How does it connect to our life here? When we think about it, we should be able to make a difference every day along the way. We should be applying these things, whether it's remote sensing, whether it's water purification, whether it's pushing the envelope on textiles and fabrics, right? Because they have to be much more lasting. Those things need to be applied every day. We need to build capacity. What gets kids come out of the chute interested in science, right?
Absolutely.
They love science.
Why is the sky blue? Absolutely.
Picking up the bugs, the snails, all the kind of stuff. So how do you keep them involved? Kids love space, they love dinosaurs, right?
Yeah.
Those are ways that we can be interested. But space encompasses all of that. It encompasses biology, it encompasses physics, it encompasses chemistry, it encompasses policy. So we have the opportunity to do a range of things, but we have to my task is to let people know that it's not just rocket scientists and billionaires who can be involved. We need everyone. We need the full range of human potential and skills to be able to make this happen. My task is to help make this and allow people to globally be involved and having an aspiration of, how do we evolve as a human species? How do we move ahead?
And that's the biggest question of all. And just to really wrap this up, is with the 100-year spaceship and the program that you're opening this up to the whole world, and you're saying that we need the whole world, is you're putting a tremendous opportunity in front of people. There is again the old cliche about science is that discoveries are made by standing on the shoulders of giants. And making this program, you're offering people to become not just the most of what they can be today, not just to make a contribution to humanity, but to become in the future one of those giants.
Well, thank you very much. How we do that, I'd love to people get involved. They can go to, I have to do this, 100yss.org, 100yss.org. We have lots of ways for people to participate. And I absolutely let you know that, yes, I was involved in space exploration, and so many people can be involved, and we're in space right now on Earth.
Do it.